Hey, it's Soleil, and this is episode 243 of the Orange Pill Investor. And I just watched QuantBros 7.5, and the pump today has got me super motivated. So it makes me want to just sell all of my MicroStrategy shares and let that sink in for a second and just YOLO all long calls. And I'm probably not going to do it, but I've got to just let's just compare and see if I should. So not financial advice, of course, but let's go to our friend optionsprofitcalculator.com and see what kind of option prices are reasonable. Let's just talk cash account. This will come into play later. I'll talk what it would look like in a margin with a 50% requirement. But for now, 100 shares would cost 19 grand. And 5 of the December 2025 380 strike calls, just straight degen nosebleed section, would cost 18. So I'm going to call that good. I'm going to call $19,000 shelled out in cash for shares is going to be equivalent enough to 18 for these purposes. And I'm going to go with a hypothetical MSTR price of $506. And since I normally shit or get off the pot with options about 90 days prior, then I would probably make a decision on whether to close these for profit or not around September. So I'm going to take a look at what what these options prices would be in September 21st at 506 prices. Original purchase price for all 5 of these options would be 18 grand. It's now worth 79. Subtract that, what you paid from the sale price. That leaves a profit of $60,000. So you basically just over triple the money. And at a price of 506, if you just own shares, the shares are now worth 50 grand minus the 19,000 is a profit of 30. So it looks like YOLO degen long call purchases would just about double the profit. However, as bullish as I am, that's still kind of terrifying because that's just about the riskiest play you can make. And, absolutely not financial advice, but even as bullish as everyone in the irresponsibly long MicroStrategy community and the MSTR den are, I don't think I can pull the trigger on just YOLOing completely into those calls. Now, with that being said, I do have 20 of them. So, but the prospect of selling, I have here we go, 20 of them. The prospect of just selling 2,000 shares and then just going all long with long calls is a little bit too much. I guess I finally reached my irresponsibly long limit. And but it definitely would print twice as much money on a similar move. Now, just for the heck of it, I want to see if this changes. If I go up to like 1,025. I did not look at this ahead of time, so this will be interesting to see. Wow, even options profit calculators like, I don't know, dude. I don't know how to find these numbers. I might have broke the internet with this one. Nope, there we go. Same thing. September 21st. Paid 18 grand. Holy shit, now it's worth 316. So up 300,000. All right, so let's see. What price was that at? That's at 1,008. So 1008 times 100 minus the 19 grand initial investment. Okay. So that's a big difference. So depending on how insane MicroStrategy gets, this trade looks a lot different. I was not expecting that, and I'm kind of second guessing. Like, did I even do my math right? $1,000 price, 100 shares, yeah, would be worth 100,000. I've just got to double check the math here. Minus the 19 grand leaves you with 80. But that same investment in these degen long calls doesn't just for extra money like it would with shares. What was that, 15x? Okay. So it looks like it's better, but it just depends on how crazy the MSTR price goes. Now, I'm trading on margin. So going back to the first example, if I get 100 shares for 19,000 and there's a 50% margin requirement, then I can get another 100 shares for that same price. So in that scenario, I'd have 200 times 506 minus my 19,000 original investment. And in that case, before we were making 60, I think, and just owning shares on margin ended up being better. But let's take a look at margin. But margin is also risky as shit too. So, but let's just take a look at on margin times 200 shares. Now we've got a $200,000 value. We got to pay back the $19,000 loan, making 182. So even on margin, if this goes nuclear, margin is not going to keep up with these long calls positions. Now, me being me, at whatever point MicroStrategy starts to exceed the 380 strike, so like when it gets to 450 for sure, if it did, I'm just gonna start selling covered calls like a madman anyway. And at a 500, at a $400, let's say 450, at a $450 MSTR price, for every covered call, I'm making at least 1% of that a week. And if I've got 5 long calls that are now in the money, An MSTR is worth 45 grand for 100 shares. That's like 2 grand a week just off of these 5 contracts. And if MicroStrategy's $1,000 a share, then that's like 5 grand a week selling covered calls, selling poor man's covered calls on 5 long call contracts that are deep in the money now. And I would basically just be using my strike prices as my exit price. So if MicroStrategy is trading at $4.50 a share and I sell a covered call for $4.75 or $500 and the shares get called away at $500 a share, then that's my exit price for that particular covered call. Now, granted, I will have a certain amount of forever positions. I don't know how many of these 2,200 shares will be forever. I currently have 6 figures in margin usage right now. So this example where I have I'm saying, okay, buy 100 shares or 200 shares on margin and it costs you 19 grand. You can pretty much multiply that times 5. That's how much margin use I have. So for me in 2025, I will be paying back all of that margin. And I've been meaning to actually compile what my monthly expenses are for all of the MicroStrategy that I've purchased. And I think the $40,000 signature loan that I got was like 800 a month, I think. So why would I limit my upside? Well, because let's see, I got paid $600 to sell an at the money covered call last week. Well, at least doing one of those, 1.25 of those a month, I need to just to pay the, the premium on that. Excuse me, not to pay the premium, to pay the loan note. And really, I look at this no differently. And you know what? Now that I think about it, I need to do a whole ass episode on this. It's just occurred to me. So this is my kind of small potatoes way of doing what Sailor's doing. So he gets to borrow at like 0% interest, 0.25% interest, 0.5% interest. All these little, I think all of the Bitcoin that they have on right now is what is that, like 0.8? I can't remember who said it. It's probably Ben Workman was talking about their convertible notes or whatever, and actually maybe Sailor even said it in one of his interviews. But he's paying less than 1% interest to hold the best asset that's ever existed. And so for me, and so he has to pay. He still has to pay for the debt. So he does have to make loan payments. He can't just take the loan, buy the Bitcoin, and then not pay the loan back. That isn't how that frickin' works. So he's got his software business, and they make however many millions, 50 millions, hundreds of millions of dollars a year, and they pay the loans with that money. So I borrowed 6 figures, 2 signature loans, that's like 75, another 30 off of my HELOC, another 10 that I just got approved for my paid off SUV. So I've got 6 figures in debt, and that's not even including the money that I borrowed from myself on my on my retirement accounts, because I was kind of pissed off that they wouldn't let me just slam my entire retirements into MSTR. I have to pick from these stupid fucking mutual funds. And so I have to service the debt. And if I was making a shitload of money, I make decent money at my job, which I'm going to be quitting next year if MicroStrategy cooperates. But the money to pay these loans doesn't just materialize out of nowhere. So I would either have to sell like 10 shares a month, right? I buy twice as many MicroStrategy shares as I'm allowed to. Actually, probably 3 or 4 times as many because I borrowed money from the bank and then I'm borrowing that much on margin from Tasty Trade. And I looked at that the other day. I had forgotten. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm borrowing this money from Tasty Trade, and they don't just give me that money for free. So they're actually, what was the last? It was like $600 or $700 is what I paid for my margin usage the other day. So if the other loan cost me $800, if the 2 loans are $1,600, the HELOC is another $300 or $400. So that's $2,000 a month. And I think the car loan is going to be another $200 a month. So $2,200 a month. So I got to sell like 4 of these covered calls a month anyway, just to cover, just to service the debt. And so yeah, but I'm going way overkill. So I mean, really, if I just did that, I would only have to sell 4 covered calls a month. And not financial advice, but for people who are a little more squeamish about missing out on maximum upside, but want to use margin and have to figure out a way to pay for it. If it's costing me, $2,200 a month for all the debt that I've accumulated, then I only have to sell 4 covered calls a month at the money to service it. And, I don't even have to sell them at the money. Like I've got these out here. I sold 2 at the 230 strike out to 45 days to expiration. I could sell 3 or 4 of those and have it as well. Have some upside built in and do it that way. So there's tons and tons and tons of ways to do this. And to me, borrowing money to accumulate a valuable asset and then selling covered calls against that asset to pay the loan off makes sense. Maybe it doesn't make sense to sell covered calls on 90% of the asset like I've been doing. But while MSTR was trading somewhat sideways, I was trying to just stack as many of these long calls as I possibly could. And I didn't get the timing the greatest. I really started selling these at the money covered call all through September, thinking, okay, let me try to get away with it, get away with a fast one before October. But October came a month early, so that limited my upside quite a bit. But I'm still up, so it's not like limited upside means no upside. I'm very happy with the way that my account, my portfolio has done over the last month. Even though it could have been much higher, it's still number go up. So that was just me being a little edgy. The thought of selling all of my shares to just YOLO long calls is not something that I really have the stones to do. And I think I'm just, if we were to have a dick measuring contest to see who's the most irresponsibly long, I think I can hold my head high with the amount of leverage that I have deployed here. So I think my irresponsibly long street cred is intact, even with selling the covered calls and whatnot. But with that being said, I don't think I can just oh god. I don't think I could just sell all my shares and YOLO into this. But I'll be damned if every single time I watch an episode of QuantBros, I don't get more bullish. Like, it seems impossible. Like, once you're a Bitcoiner and you're just laser-eyed focused and you're like, okay, I understand what Bitcoin is and it's going up forever, Laura. You just, okay, that's it. You've watched frickin' 5011 episodes of Michael Saylor and 30 hours of him on What Is Money, and then once you've exhausted every single interview you possibly can on him, you just, like a friggin' crack addict, you're just going and trying to find other Bitcoiners getting interviewed and just gobbling up information. And it seems like it's, once you're completely laser-eyed focused, it's impossible to become even more laser-eyed. And I thought I was just about as obsessed with MSTR as I possibly could after watching QuantBros 1, and then QuantBros 2 comes out, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5, and then 6, and then 7, and 7.5, and now I got to go and watch 8. I think 8 just came out. So I should be watching 8 instead of making this dumbass video. But it's crazy to me how every single QuantBros episode comes out, I'm more bullish. Every time I see a post from Ben Workman, I'm more bullish. Every time I see a video from Dan Hillary, I'm more bullish. I don't understand how it can just keep increasing. It's kind of insane. So that was just attention whoring. I'm not selling all my shares to YOLO into these, but I am damn sure going to be a lot more careful, less reckless about selling these covered calls. So I waited for MicroStrategy. I held 200 shares out from selling covered calls. I waited for MicroStrategy to pump to 190. Boom, sold another covered call. If MicroStrategy goes to 200, 210, 220, whatever, somewhere, I'll be kind of, have one eye on the market. And I probably wouldn't do it at 200 because a lot of times, 200 might be resistance and maybe it'll just bounce hard off 200. But if it goes materially above 200, if it goes 210, 220, that would probably be my trigger to sell my last covered call. And then on Friday, I got to figure out what to do with these in the money covered calls. And then I've got 25 days to figure out what to do with these in the money covered calls. So lots of good times ahead. And I just thought that would be a little fun comparison and a little bit of just allowing myself to be as bullish as humanly possible and just kind of entertain a what if scenario. When I looked at MicroStrategy going to 500 and it compared relatively favorably, or reasonably kind of to buying 200 shares on margin, I was like, oh, okay, maybe I don't need to go out and YOLO on these long calls. But mapping it to 1,000, this got crazy. I was not expecting it to get that freaky big. So I don't really do price predictions, but I guess I would be a little bit disappointed if the 380 strikes don't go in the money at some point in 2025 with all of the, S&P 500 inclusion and the QQQ, and they're going to finally be able to do fair market earnings. They'll have positive earnings per share for the first time in how freaking long. So with all of that optimism, yeah, if these 380 strikes don't go in the money, that would be bearish as shit, I think. So I guess 500 a share is my base case. That's my bear case. And yeah, anything over that could just lead to some insane long call numbers. And the last thing I'll say before I leave is, the meme that says there will be signs. Yeah, my 2 weeks notice will be a sign, and I'm hoping the sooner the frickin' better. All right, be good, y'all.